we were hiking and I
That'll stop the story quick. Do you see how quick?
So
it's
during the
going?
recording, can you actually tell us how you're wearing it again?
did fast go
We want to know the opposite. It's almost like Jim's here. We're right off the rails, folks.
Ready?
I fell in on sidewalk in
You guys saw him.
morning. I had great.
No, he was behind me. So not to say you can.
So welcome to our Friday, January 13th meeting. Rotary Club of Hamilton, Stony Creek. Rotary International President is Jennifer Jones from Windsor, Ontario. This year's theme is Imagine Rotary. The January theme of the month is Rotary Awareness or Vocational Service. January pod is Team Goodwill, leaders Mike and Todd, being backed up by Rick, Dan, Nadia, and Martina. We'll start the meeting with a toast to King and toast to Cameron. And we're going to have an introduction of guests and visitors with Martina.
Two guests today, Jenny Foley, who's kind of like a member, but she's still a special guest because we haven't seen her for a while.
Oh, sure.
Our guest speaker.
Yeah.
Introduce more formally shortly. How do we welcome our guests?
Jenny's IT professional for Mike. Always make sure he gets online.
Exactly.
He's a
So I have a moment of reflection with Rick.
the glasses are the old guy glasses. Of course, I got his long speech to talk to you about.
Oh,
Anyway, it's in big print too.
It looks cumbersome.
Yeah. This is from a very wise individual. And he said, the advice I would give to his younger me or any young person would be, keep your head up in failure and keep your head down in success. You might know the individual, Jerry Seinfeld. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
I heard he's got a good show on.
It did, yeah.
Actually, comedians getting coffee in cars is an excellent podcast.
Yeah.
I love that one.
So we have a vocational minute. It was Nadia.
She's on her way.
She's on her way too.
Sure.
Yeah, she should be here because we can maybe save that for later.
Yeah, we'll post-
Yeah, she
Excellent.
was at the Attic Pizza when she called me, so I've left. You get a reputation standing.
So we'll pause for a minute for lunch. Well, what we have our lunch.
Yes.
We have
Sounds good.
chicken, rice, vegetable soup, and sandwiches. And then we'll for our vocational minute. Spin the lunch.
See you.
Most of that.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, they get one too, but thank you.
Is that right? No.
this is right or right?
Gentlemen,
Did they take all the time?
okay, I'm gonna take your blanket
No?
and it will,
Nothing I know of.
So I look at the people I know that they always, yeah, Jackie Reed, I know Jack. She's always writing them.
Very good.
Right?
Yeah.
How about you?
I only have a digit.
Yes, I have that dialogue.
Yeah.
You know, they do that.
Well, no, that
Don't
doesn't.
have a paper. I never get.
So if you only know the date.
Oh, I gotta show you.
Mother. Every time I can see her, she'll get through dog.
Yeah.
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 100,000 people in Hamilton area.
Yes.
So look at tight, yeah. Good to see you. Financial.
Where?
We're supposed to go. But I was so going on the baby average.
Yeah.
So I said, really,
And have you know?
He's talk.
He's good. And have you
So I went out to school.
Oh,
Welcome today.
I'm good, thank you.
I'm scared to get Chelsea.
Oh. Are you doing it?
Same.
Video.
So we need next
So
week.
you've been
So,
no, are you not?
In line, not around.
Jim, did you see Betsy in the parking lot?
What?
Did you see old Betsy in the parking lot?
No, is it there?
Yep.
Good, shocking,
Put a new floor in it last week.
you Lord.
Yeah, it rotted out, so we
Oh,
put
did
the floor. Yep.
that is better.
It's actually a vehicle I bought off Jim. 2008 Ford.
I have to pay the bond. So anybody,
Have to do what? Oh, thank you. I'm making out like bandit right now, so I'm up 60 now. Oh, here's Tom, I'm gonna hit 100 pretty soon.
I think we'll be short a chair.
You got a chair?
Might have to pull a chair up.
Yes.
Probably through there.
I mean, it's been so long. Like, Hey, Tom, I got you back there.
Just gotta watch when.
All right.
But Tom, we got room here if you want.
Sorry.
How was your drive? Did you just come from home?
Yeah, well, yeah,
Straight
it
talk.
took me a half hour longer to clean up the drive than I
It's
was
set out
trying
of
to.
mortar. It's used for collecting money. They could have gotten it through the window. The thing is rusted and stuff. To anybody that sands down
Window.
page.
Who's collecting?
Okay.
Powder coat? Powder coating.
It could be either or.
There's the guy in Stony Creek does.
Thank you.
Stony Creek Collision powder coats.
Okay.
But if it's just a regular paint job, I'd say Depew Auto Body.
Here, it's up to you. Okay, because they got to scrape it, they got it
Sandblasted.
sandblasted and then find it reservers. Hugh and Stony Creek.
No, it's Depew Auto Body, Stony Creek Auto Collision,
Yeah.
and Marco from Depew Auto on Depew and Beach.
I go to Split
Steve? Yeah, actually, he's a good one.
He's really good.
Who?
Split
I go
It's
down
right across
First
the
North
road.
on
Right.
Oregon Avenue.
They painted.
Yeah, what's up?
They, well,
Yeah.
I think it might have been Ontario Auto Collision, but it's Cars.
Yeah.
My
just wanted to make
garage
sure you didn't have
recommended
anything
that
from
place,
Rotary.
and they did my back end when I got there.
Yeah, it's-
Steve, well, I get lower price than you do.
And that's the issue. It's for a charity, so.
So
They've got to get one. Okay.
Okay.
His name is Steve.
Yeah.
Really
It would have been really off because
And I
Dan
got an email.
was
from
decided not to stay.
Dale is moved to,
Here comes the plate.
It's a, what?
Dale is moving to Spain.
Spain.
Yeah. He's just trying to find himself.
To it. Pepper it out. Slimy vegetable.
Sandwiches for the. Right, let's see it internally, new leaf. End of year.
The only thing is, it's all.
Yeah, that was strong, Brad.
Looking at.
I always go to Christmas.
Yeah, they got meters and now it's not.
Yeah.
They shut down, I think.
They put money in.
Yep.
Up there. See the Benny's out there.
And he says,
Do in my spare time.
I thought you said something to feel like.
He's not gonna
I thought that was-
He's still there.
Still better.
Well, Tom, we did have the handicap parking up here.
Yeah, we have a. I offered, but he gladly declined.
Shit, I'm
Mr. Ulrich.
pretty.
The mobile, so the work one is there. But you just call, leave a message, because he's there all the time, he's often there till 10 o'clock at night, so.
How was everyone's Christmas last week?
Good.
Good. Your Christmas last week.
And it's New Year's Eve today. First time I did all the cooking, break out champagne.
The old cover. My son?
Right done. Oh, he said he was gonna see me here.
This is the first time that I didn't celebrate both Christmases.
Mark it down.
Because the 25th, I volunteer something at the church, I think it's 24th is in Christmas. This is not a good time. Our church.
Yeah.
So I ended up to be there, but I didn't do Christmas.
My aunt's parents have been lit up.
Yeah.
In Ottawa.
Yeah. Generally, I have.
And so that, I mean, it's or it's no way.
No, people come in, but it doesn't have. The floor. They come up with some trees.
That's in Christ.
I could smell it. And I gave it first food, and I could see the pepper sugar.
Living a lot for where I developed.
So.
And all the new houses are at your price.
The.
So then you're being paid
Scrutinize everything.
Now they're new thingies.
Yeah, that thing was just like a.
That's
Yeah.
why everyone's a little
Your
different.
place
It's
when
like,
you're
You ever gone to Mai Tai? On top.
Make them salad too.
Applebee's.
Fairview?
Not gonna you know where McDonald's and all that is?
It shouldn't happen because, so for you to sell your house.
On
You have
top
to
of
provide.
it's in that wall.
So the driver's
You go in there and get the lunch.
where you confirm what you are.
It's not
I'm going to do the course, I wish it was
Soup and spring
And they
rolls,
did that.
salad and.
That's a short shot.
It's a little expensive at night. It's a lunch.
So apparently, yeah, Easton. Originally, and then came in as.
Cross. It's called. One inside.
Yeah. Can't sell something we don't. Buy.
It keeps around to be told.
Really? Eating.
There's one
Buyer to eat the down first.
I think I saw one that's sort of cool somewhere, but I didn't.
We want.
So
to
it's
just-
not too much, but it's a statute.
That's why they're children.
So you look at us. No notice.
Yes.
You can't sell something. No.
The railing
So
to
it goes
the-
before. Two things that are.
And then there was the balcony, just.
And it's disturbingly gray.
No, equity. Equity. That's, yeah, so.
Well,
Yeah.
Eating interest. Person didn't know that. Could end up with it.
So I don't see.
Can they sue them?
So what's gonna seal that?
No,
both
verify.
those cases?
They will,
The
they-
liable in good faith.
They don't. Yes,
yes, the lawyer has to, but the lawyer's gonna say he did. So,
yeah, but, yes, because. but
Don't
what
be
I
shy.
see-
There's coffee and
there's a
dessert there
second
too,
house
folks.
which-
Lemon meringue and apple.
Some circuits in, rural is in- not the real estate guy,
No?
somebody's. Not necessarily, not if they've actually done created fraudulent documents. No, they didn't create, somebody's given information to these people, something's off here. And eventually, if they invest, they might catch up. I see somebody that works in the office, maybe at the Rotary,
Yeah.
and they see all the stuff. No, this is not. I know though. I think this is more complicated.
I don't know about organization.
Well, we'd be interested in the listing, what's the same? Stop. Right?
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Second one is. Stop.
Kramer.
Where's right?
Yes.
Just didn't know that in your.
Well, I mean, I saw odds of this, like his house. I would think I might say, so it's moving. They're not there, somebody else will stay with us. Tip them off. Oh, it's clean.
I'll give you something, down our street, everybody saw it. House down the street, moving van showed up at the house. All day they were taking the furniture out. Afraid the guys threw it, because nobody really talked to them. No, apparently they weren't, the house was empty. It was so blatant, they just saw it.
Oh, thank
It
you.
was.
They must have a really nice furniture.
But in the eighties, late eighties, there was an article in paper states. They actually stole the whole house.
So.
They actually lifted the house and everything was gone.
Like you went.
I will. Furniture and all.
Everything was stolen. He calls the police. He called, I think, 4 or 5 times. They wouldn't even.
Okay.
They don't have these. They still, I don't know what happened. If that is, I moved it.
It's pretty hard to run away with that.
Imagine we get away. But they were there.
They moved it across the street, painted it.
I have people lined up to get the water. Nothing there. And the neighbor thought, didn't know.
Oh, I gotta get my car.
You should tell your neighbor you're away.
You put it on it.
I worked for a summer in Union. Just a year to.
It's gonna go.
They did have bin numbers or
Housing shortage,
destination numbers done in.
If they will,
So-
There's one house I wanted to adjust it.
it's smart money to.
Grass was cut. I was back in the neighborhood about 2 weeks later,
Bottom.
but something was off about the house.
So it'll be once the.
When I was there, it was like really quiet,
It'll be looked at.
and
It's gonna go.
it had curtains on everything. Window was open, and it looked to really slow setup. Only like 2 feet. The couch is not look like a photo, because I had to walk by it. Couch didn't move. You know how you walk by things and the couch perspective changes? Perspective stayed the same. So I said something to this Mel guy that I was
Like the
that was
liberals.
driving this down.
You know,
I told him, he reported
is
it,
at all times.
and it was a grow up. And they would go, they had these big things set up with lights, and they had a big picture in the window. So if people drove by them. Yeah, but it just seemed really off, like the grass was cut, but there's no wear and tear anywhere. And there's like, and we were back and forth in that neighborhood like every day for like 3 weeks. And it was like a main stretch. Oh, and the one day we drove by, there was a guy in a van. The van was back like right up to the garage door. It wasn't like an inch to the garage door to the van. And then when I noticed the window, I said something to him. And I said, and there was the only vehicle I've seen is a cube van like back right into it. So I don't think anybody's living there. I was looking for a place to rent. That's why I was paying attention, right? I thought this was an empty house. And it turned out to be a grow up. And they had a fake picture in the window. So if you looked in, it looked like they had furniture, but it was just a photo of furniture.
So I know a person who's a real estate agent, so name is, they're not a Rotary. Who bought a house in a brand new neighborhood, brand new house.
Refuse to drink.
And they can tell the new house across the street has become a grow up. They can actually look in the windows, see the lights on in the basement and all the crop growing. This is 5 years before it was even sort of old. So they called the police. Police had no interest in coming.
Violently off.
No.
Didn't set.
So what they did is they broke the window in the basement, dialed 911 and said somebody's breaking into the house next door. This was an expensive house, right? This was in $1 million neighborhood. And they rented it. Somebody could take possession of it, rented it out for some cash. And there was a grow up going on.
The house had the road. It wasn't a brand new house, but it was, I guess it would have been about a 10-year-old house on the street. Then the cops got it eventually, but they had to demolish the whole house. And then-
Because if it gets, so what happens? The air conditioner or the furnace turns on, it just spreads the spores all through the house. And then it gets right into the drywall, it gets into the wood behind the drywall. And if it gets in concentrations enough, it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. Old levels are so high.
People.
And that's the case. All you can do is buy it. You're buying it from the lot. It's gonna have to demolish it.
Yeah.
A lot of them, they use some pretty heavy pesticides and everything else in the house and growth stuff, and that stuff is just seeped everywhere. But I've seen where people have done that, they've had kids living.
Well, they do things like they try to make, because the marijuana has a very strong oil. So they try, while it's growing, when it hits a certain age, strong labor. So they try to vent it down sewers. So the police can tell there's a grow up in the neighborhood. But they then have to, I think it's steel. Because of the smell.
Shouldn't they be able to tell from the hydro bills for the amount of power that?
You can't just,
They bypass it.
but there's also things like they bypass the meter.
But Norbert just.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and now with the LED lights, some of those grow lights are less than an old incandescent bulb.
Well, and some of it's now legal, right? What do you allow? 4 plants per person in the house? Like, so even if you call and report a grow up, the policeman's gonna go, well, okay. Is it legal or is it not?
I replaced all my shop lights in 2008 with LED lights. Now they're starting to wear out and I've had to replace them, make the balances again. But my hydro bill was cut in half, changing all the LED lights at my business. So everything's LED in my shop and the bill went in half. It's way back up now, but that's because the price of electricity.
Now, I had downloaded the bill today for the gas.
And bridges.
So then I started looking at December 2021 it was $15 something per square meter, per cubic meter.
Yeah.
It is now $32 something.
When
December 21. Yeah. Well, sure up, you could be in England where it's gone up, what, 10
Yes.
times?
Yes.
They're back to burning coal. And
We're going to be,
That
the
was-
way we're going,
Yeah, 103. Reading the
because my
headlines.
bill
Because I'm the one.
$560.
Oh, little bit.
Yeah, that's good.
My cousin.
You'll call the ladies and bring it another one.
And it's been soggy and cold.
So we're gonna get back to our regular meeting. All the rest of you finish your dessert. And we're gonna call on Dottie for a vocational minute.
You.
Hey, everyone. I hope everybody had a lovely holiday season, and for those following the Julian calendar, Happy New Year tomorrow. It's our New Year's. Vacational moment. So something came up at the branch, and I thought it just kind of warranted some just some quick tips for anyone that's sort of looking at now. We should kind of look at, maybe having a will, maybe finding our powers of attorney, for that just in case moment. And really anybody who has any sort of property whatsoever should have them, to be fair. Not something that's just for seniors looking at retirement, but it's something that should be in place whenever. So many times, and I mean, you've been in Maine, so many times when people start to implement it, it's always because of some sort of emergency or tragedy, and the steps that have to be done to implement it are have to be followed, and because of that, unfortunately, sometimes things take a little bit. So what we are encouraging all of our members to do, who already have, who don't have a power of attorney in place or the wills in place, is to get them done. You can do them online. There's some online ones you can do through services now. Go to a lawyer. But we really are encouraging people, especially nowadays, to get them done. One thing that in years past, and I'm sure you see this a lot, right? People would say, I'm just gonna make everything joint. So make everything joint with my kids, then it solves everything. And people are not aware, because everything is fine with family when everything's fine with family. I mean, everybody gets along, everybody's great, everybody agrees. So they don't. And one of the challenges, which people aren't aware of, is when you make things joint, when a parent makes things joint with their adult children, that child now also owns 100% of that account. So that account now becomes 100% of their household property, their marital property, can be involved in any lawsuits. And, older parents don't think of that when they say, I'm just gonna put all my kids on, or I'm gonna put, the kid that lives closest to me on it. Without realizing that it becomes, plus that adult child should be paying taxes on the interest that's earned in that account, because again, it's 100% ownership. So there have been situations where Revenue Canada has come a knocking, because all of a sudden accounts were made joint, that were single for so long. And they came a knocking for some interest payments that weren't being allocated evenly. So it's one thing just to really have that, conversation and that understanding, because nobody sues anybody until somebody sues somebody. And those assets now become part of, any lawsuit if your name's on it. So we really do recommend get a will in place, have executors in place, go through the proper channels, go through probate, if it's warranted, because it really does, ease things at the time when there's an emergency. And what we are doing as a financial institution and encouraging all our members is, don't wait. If you have your powers of attorney in place and you deal with a financial institution, take your kids in for one of your annual reviews or your appointments. Your adult children that's looking after your power of attorney, your adult children who's looking after your wills, take them in so the people at the branch can get to know your kids as well. So during that emergency time, when that comes into play, everything's already in place and we're not worried about, we've got to send things back to the lawyer. We've got to make sure that this is the last one. There's steps involved so that you have access immediately and that we know your kids and we understand the dynamics of the relationship as well. So, don't keep them tucked away and hidden away until, somebody's in the hospital and now you've got to get everything in place. Meet with the representatives now, meet with your branch managers now, meet with your financial advisors now, let them know who the powers of attorneys are, get those powers of attorney certified at the branch, and bring your kids in, whoever's going to be responsible for it, so that again, we can get to know them. We can get to know, conversations with everybody there. And maybe make some, some tips and some things that can help in the future as well. So that's my vocational minute, is don't wait till the last minute and get everybody involved as soon as possible so that everybody's on the same page. A very quick story with that is the assumption is my parents, before my dad passed away years and years before, my dad woke up one day and said, we want to, we're going to do our pre-planning for a funeral. And I'm like, okay. She's like, so we're going shopping today for casket. I'm like, all right. And having done my father-in-law's funeral, where nothing was in place and nothing was done, was this horrible emotional experience. It was awful. When I went with my parents, it was kind of fun. I got to kind of see, and I made a whole bunch of assumptions. My dad's funeral was going to be this way. And I knew exactly how he would have wanted it through Ukrainian traditions. I knew it exactly. And I made the assumption that my mom, of course, being in the Ukrainian community for 4 years, wanted the same thing. Of course she would. Why wouldn't she? They've gone to it. That's what we've done. And during that time, they would say, my dad, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. They go, same for my mom. Nope. I want this one. Nope. I want this one. Nope. I think I want to do this instead. And I was surprised that I would have done it completely different. Just with the assumption that that's what she would want it. So, having those conversations, may seem inappropriate, but really, it really does allow you to really get to know, what, the individuals want, whether it's during a time when they're incapacitated, whether it's during a time of death. You really got to get to know what's behind them. And it really is, I'm going to say, cathartic experience to really have those conversations with your loved ones when it's a happy time, because then you get to truly know what's in their heart, as opposed to during a tragic time when you're just trying to get through the emotions and just, what my parents would like, as opposed to, I'm going to say, what would people think? And it doesn't really matter what people think. It's really one. So that's my vocational minute. There you go.
Thank you very much. I have to back you up on that with the decisions after the fact.
Yes.
It should have been.
I actually had an incident where somebody had a power of attorney where one lived in Vancouver and one lived in Nova Scotia. And I'm like, okay, so how's this going to work? And they were like, well, they'll just fly in. And really don't, I had an estate where there was like 6 kids and all 6 kids had to agree because they wanted everything fair and equal. And I don't, the understanding is there that they just want everybody to, be happy and get along. But the implications behind that are just a nightmare. So, yeah, there you go.
On that point, we used to pick the most mature child, because a lot of the parents want to do the fairness. And then in one instance, I think one was in Ottawa, one was in Sudbury, and the other one was local. But you had to tell them, like, you do realize they have to sign the papers, each of them, and it's going to be burdensome. And oh no, I want to be fair to my children. It's got nothing to do with fairness, because they're just the person signing the papers. But that actually happens.
Mm-hmm. Like my brother's in the States, and when my parents did their will, my dad's like, well, no, it's gonna be fair. And I'm like, he travels. Yeah. Or like, no, it's not gonna work.
But no, you can sign it on the computer.
You can do online ones.
Yeah,
it's getting that way.
Geography is really
I've now sworn documents via computers. We're allowed to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the geographic thing is moot point. Becoming.
Always take the advice of, because again, you never know that. I would say putting somebody as your executor, really, you need to have a good conversation with them, because the legal implications of it now is not everybody wants to be the executor, chooses to be it, and there's certain obligations that they have to commit to, and sometimes for quite a while as they sort things out. So, yeah, always be upfront and open, and always seek confessions if you can.
So I'm going to move on to our guest speaker.
Yeah.
Martina has a piece of paper in her hand to introduce.
you need a lot of it, but I'm so excited that Carolyn Rankin Bhutan is here today. As some of you know, we have a 3-year sponsorship or 3-year support of the formerly called Jack Parent Reading Program, which is a literacy program for children out of St. David's School. It's renamed the Devin Bernay Literacy Program, and we're so excited to have Carolyn here today to talk to us and provide us an update because it's been on hiatus for 2 years. Carolyn is the Director of Educational Programs at Neighbour to Neighbour, and we know Neighbour to Neighbour was dear to the heart of our former member Ralph. So she's an Ontario certified teacher and has been an educator for over 15 years. She volunteers as a member the board of directors for both Interval House of Hamilton and Extend a Family. And just want to welcome Carolyn and take it over.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. I'm always excited when I get to talk about our programming and why I think it's important, and to thank the people who make our programming happen. So as Martina said, our program was renamed the Devin Burnett Literacy Program after Devin passed away this spring. I had been a long-time volunteer in the program, and I took role on as director in July. And I had the task of bringing these programs back after being dormant for 2.5 years via COVID. We'd had a small pilot during that time of online. However, the difficulty of that was that the children we serve often have huge barriers to technology, which is something we're seeing now. A lot of the students that we're dealing with, not just at St. David's, but as a program as a whole, did not participate or had very limited participation in remote learning. So we're working with students who have really not had formal education for 2.5 years and are just coming into it. And many of them opted out of returning to school last year because of the barriers of their parents' work schedules changing, everything with COVID being different. So the format of our literacy program, which some of you may know, but I'll just go over it, is I'll use St. David's as the school that you guys graciously fund as an example. So at the school, there are 6 to 8 volunteers, and every volunteer works either 1 or 2 100-minute shifts a week. And during those shifts, they work with children one-on-one, so they'll work with either 4 or 5 students. And they work with the same 4 or 5 students all year to really develop those bonds. And the heart of our program, for me, is to teach children that reading is an active activity. A lot of research shows that struggling readers see reading as something you do. They see it as the decoding part. It's just reading words in a line. And then when you've read those words in a line well enough, someone says, good job. Our program is designed to help children interact with the text. Talk about the text with a caring adult. Get to be silly, get to wonder, get to make questions, get to work on those comprehension skills that are really hard to work on as a class as a whole. Because when struggling learners struggle to read and they're doing comprehension activities with the class as a whole, they often struggle to engage. But in a one-to-one environment where we're meeting the child exactly where they're at, the child's able to engage and able to talk about the book. I was just at a school yesterday mentoring a new volunteer, and he was working with a student, and the student was in hysterics at the idea that this boy in the story was going to cross a river. And you could see it for that child in the moment. He saw reading as something deeper, that this is something fun. Because if reading is really difficult for you, it's hard to see the joy in reading. It's hard to see the purpose in reading as something you do for yourself and not for others. Because if reading is difficult for you, it's something that you're made to do. And we know that attitudes towards reading really have long-term implications. And this is something I really emphasize with my volunteers, which is we have 4 goals in our program. One is to improve reading scores. And this year initially, at this point anecdotal, but we're in the process of gathering our mid results. This year, our program has been more effective than ever because the kids were farther behind than ever and so starved for that one-on-one attention that they're progressing faster than they have in the past, which is great news. But my deeper focus is our other goals, which are to develop a confidence and to feel like I am a reader, Because the second a student tells themselves that they're dumb, they tune out of learning, not just in reading, but in all subjects. So getting them to see themselves as a learner, developing those positive attitudes towards learning. And then a large one is to have that connection with an adult, to have that connection with someone who cares. Because in education, there's a lot of research that tends to change over time. There's trends that you may hear about, but there's two things we know for certain, and these two things kind of guide our program. One, that a child who engages with a caring adult outside of the home has a better chance of graduating high school and having post-secondary success. That just one adult who cares about that child who isn't in their family, that seems to have such a large impact on a child. And two, and this is why we serve the students that we serve, the biggest factor that will determine a child's educational success is their parents' income. That's the biggest factor. That's bigger than parenting skills. That's bigger than whether or not the child even has a learning disability or not. Socioeconomic status has such a big impact on whether a child will succeed or not succeed. And our program is designed to mitigate that by providing that caring adult and by providing that one-to-one environment. A lot of these children, what we were hearing from all of our schools, but actually that the principal at St. David really clearly identified to me, is that children's oral development skills are very behind. And that's one of the things that testing really doesn't show. But because of COVID and their lack of social interaction, their oral development is really behind. And what is scary about that is oral communication skills are key to develop any other academic skill throughout a child's life. And we know that these kids are behind. But our program engages kids on that level. They get to talk, they get to be silly, they get to question, all of those things that are really important for not just reading skill development, but also brain development. And that really has a lasting impact on the children. At St. David's, we're working with 16 students and they receive tutoring twice a week. One of the other benefits of this program that is not in our goals, but is something that we've really seen, is that our program also provides social opportunities for the volunteers. One of the volunteers at St. David actually works 2 shifts a week. And she said to me, at the beginning of the year, I wasn't in a good place. I was isolated at home. There's not a lot of social opportunities for me. And she's like, now twice a week, I'm with these wonderful, happy kids who are just delighted to see me. In the past, one of the problems that our program sometimes had was kids maybe didn't want to come and read with us. I'm going to say, unfortunately, that's not an issue this year. Kids are so starved for that one-on-one attention that throughout our program, kids are overly excited. Our volunteers are telling us that more than ever, it's when are you coming back? When's the next day? When can I see you again? Because they're not getting that one-to-one attention at home. And another thing we're hearing anecdotally is that as inflation issues are hitting families, especially in low income, are working more hours. Hourly workers are trying to work as many hours as possible, which means less time for the children. And so that's an area where our program takes a lot of focus.
Can I just interrupt?
Yes.
We have the fire inspector in and he would like to come in and check one of the units in here.
Okay.
So if you see somebody coming in, they're going to be setting the alarm off.
Okay.
So that's kind of an overview of our program. If anybody has comments or questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
How old are these children?
So they're in grades 1 to 4. This year, though we are serving a lot of children in that age range, we're particularly focusing on grades 3 and 4 because those children missed JK, grade 1 and grade 2 during COVID. So they are very far behind. We're dealing with kids in grade 4 who are reading at a kindergarten level. And so we always trust our school partners to choose the children as long as they choose within the grades we serve. And St. David particularly also picked a lot of grade 3s and 4s because of those essential years that they missed. language is immersive and the way we learn language is immersive, and to not be in classrooms for those years, it's just devastating. And so that's really where the focus is currently.
You can talk about what use some of the funds that we provide for, like the book.
Absolutely. So another big push of this program has been to make sure that our resources are matching the cultures and the groups of students that they come from, so that they are seeing themselves in books, so that they are seeing themselves in the characters that we read. And research shows us, and the reason it's so important and why we're spending so many resources on that is research does show us that if students are reading books from characters that don't look like them, they have more difficulty identifying with the characters and more difficulty seeing themselves in the characters, which has the impact of affecting comprehension and also impacting the ability to see themselves as a reader, or to see themselves as participating in that book, which is taking that active to passive. So our focus this year has been improving our resources to make sure that they are matching what the students that we serve, because we serve students from diverse backgrounds, but because of our mandate to serve the students who need this and cannot get it elsewhere, we do have a disproportionate number of students from visible minorities. So our resources really need to focus on that. So that was a big push this year, was to get those resources. And in the future, what we're hoping to do is to purchase tablets for the schools that would be kept at the schools and the offices, so that volunteers can access any resource throughout the world to really make those cultural connections with the students, which are so key.
What is your source of volunteers? It sounds like it would be leaning toward retired teachers, for instance.
Yes, it's not just retired teachers, because one element of our program that has been a big focus of mine this year is we train our volunteers quite intensively. So our requirement for a volunteer, is obviously a vulnerable sector check, but it's really a love of reading and a love of children. And they don't need to have a background in teaching, because what makes our program so effective is that it's just meaningful practice. It's not instructional. So our volunteers, all of our returning volunteers participated in a big retraining this September, because it had been 2.5 years. And then all new volunteers that come in, I train them personally. And then when they're at the school for their first couple of shifts, there's someone there with them to guide them through the process, which allows us to use volunteers from a wide variety of groups. One of the other things I did this year was work with the McMaster Student Success Center. And that works with students who have barriers to graduation. So that might mean because they're a visible minority. It may mean because they're a first-generation university student, or because they're coming from a low-income household. I've been working with the Student Success Center to get volunteers from those groups, because as I'm mentioning, just as it's as important to see themselves in books, it's also important for them to see that volunteers in the program come from a diverse background.
How many students are you serving?
So I'd say David's at 16. Throughout our program, it's 240.
In the Greater Hamilton area?
Yes.
And does the Board of Education set the curriculum that you use, or is it?
That's a great question. So it's our curriculum that we use. We train the volunteers on, we provide all of the materials, which is our biggest cost. The schools, for a lot of reasons to deal with the being able to be in a school, because it's very difficult as a volunteer organization to operate out of a school. One of the things we must do is provide all of our resources. So any pencils, a big cost this year, to go back to cost, has been things like Lysol wipes, masks, gloves, that sort of thing gets to be very costly. And we provide that all ourselves, and all of our training and all of our curriculum comes straight from Neighbour to Neighbour.
I saw on your Instagram, you have a volunteer training session coming up.
Yes, on Thursday, we're going to be training some new volunteers. A big focus of mine is, I'm a big I used to be a Girl Guide, so I'm a big be prepared. We're bringing in volunteers now. Partly one of the barriers we faced this year was illness, and any volunteer we had that had lung issues or heart issues didn't want to be in this, because despite the fact that the Hamilton board asked people to wear masks in the schools, often I am the only person wearing a mask when I go into the school. So we lost some volunteers that way. So we're recruiting for that and also prepping for next year. Because even though I mentioned the 2 trainings, which is the one in September, I provide additional trainings. That's my background. I used to own a tutoring company myself, and I used to train teachers to do the tutoring. So that's kind of my background. This year, we've been providing additional training throughout the year to any volunteer who would like additional training, additional skills, because as a whole, I'll say it this way. My entire career, I have always believed children don't change. Children are essentially the same. It's adult and society that changes. Children are always the same. But I will say post-COVID, the children are different. And the needs of the children are so difficult. Not to go deeply into it, but we also offer an after-school math program for grades 7 and 8. And I will tell you that those students in grades 7 and 8 who are 12 and 13, socially, emotionally, are more appropriate 7 to 8-year-olds. And so throughout the year, I've been offering that additional training because I want our volunteers to enter the school as confidently as possible. And I am so fortunate that I have a group of volunteers that when I say, hey, would you like to come in for an additional training? I don't get groans, I get wait lists and excitement. And that's something I feel really fortunate to work with the group of volunteers. Many of them I inherited from the program previously, but we did recruit a lot of volunteers. So, and I think that's a key element. And I think it's one of the things that our volunteers like is that they're supported. I tell all of our volunteers that I work for them, not the other way around. You're not providing a service for neighbor to neighbor. We're providing a service for you. We are supporting you so that you can go do what you love, because they do love working with the kids and they're so cute. The kids are I don't know how it happened, but by coincidence or luck, somehow the 240 kids in the Neighbor to Neighbor program are the sweetest and loveliest in the city. And I don't know how that happened, but it's absolutely true. And I'm really fortunate for the volunteers that we have.
So would you say that if COVID never happened, would those same kids be in your program?
That's an interesting question. Our criteria didn't change, but what has become difficult is knowing why is a child behind. So our criteria for our program is that the child's at least 2 years behind and cannot access the services elsewise. So we're not providing services for kids whose parents could provide them with tutoring or have access elsewhere. So that's remained the same. It's a tough question to know, and it's something we're still sorting out. Are some of these kids just behind for COVID? And I can tell you that's true, because some of those kids are taking off like a rocket, like their scores are just skyrocketing. But the truth is that there are just more students that are behind. One of the things that happened that people may not be aware of is that EQAO scores for 2021 were released the same day as the QP strike. And so people are often not aware. As a whole, across the city, the EQAO scores for reading in grade 3 and grade 6 are roughly around the 60% mark of students passing. Math is around the 30 to 45% mark. And so the need is so great. But because we work with the school partners, one of the things that makes our program successful is that the schools select the students and they know our programming, so they know the students who are going to benefit from that one-to-one.
Any other questions?
So why do you, if those numbers are so low in the school, why does the school not say what we're doing right now is not working to adjust?
I think we've been saying that for years. You're
How is
right.
that the idea of doing the testing? Is obviously we're not providing what the kids need to get the scores where they need to be.
I think the best answer I can give, given the circumstances and the setting, is to say that there are wide disagreements on what the solution would be, and that there is a disconnect sometimes between what I would call the teachers, the people in the schools dealing with the students, and those people who set the curriculum and make the decisions. They're not the same group of people. And so that's why it can be slow to change, because the people who are deciding are not teachers. And I don't think I'm amiss to say our current education minister never attended public school. And so you're going to get a slow response. Another issue is that there is a disconnect between parents and schools that needs to be rectified. It is something that, as this program goes forward, I'm going to rectify. One of the changes I'm going to make in the future, traditionally in this program, because the schools have enrolled, we haven't had a relationship with the parents. Going forward, what I hope to do is bring the parents in, because a lot of these children have multiple siblings. Some of our students come from families of 7 children. Is to have the parents come in and teach them how to build literacy in your everyday life, because parents from low-income homes don't necessarily have the time to sit at a table with 7 children and teach literacy. But there are simple tips and tricks that we send out to parents this year, but I hope to bring them in to get that community next year, that are really helpful. For example, turning on the captions when your child's watching YouTube. That actually helps them build their reading. How to use the grocery store to build literacy, because you got to take your kids with you, so you might as well help them with their literacy skills there, and get that parent interaction, which hopefully then will have a trickle down effect where we're not just affecting the one child, but now we're affecting the whole family. And I would absolutely love to also have those parents come in and do financial literacy with us as well, since they're already been identified as families of low income. And as we were talking around this table, times are harder than ever, especially with inflation, which disproportionately hurts these families. So to be able to have them come in and teach them financial literacy would be wonderful, and where I'm going in the future with this program.
I just have a comment. From my past experience and my children, I find that the problem in Canada, teachers, they don't use math, people who study math to teach math. It's a big problem. Anybody can teach, and I've had, when my girls were younger and they were in ballet school, there was a teacher asking another teacher how to teach brackets, decimals or whatever. I couldn't believe she didn't know how to teach that. And I said, what do you mean, you don't know how to teach? Well, it's hard. I said, I can walk in any classroom and teach it, no problem. And I don't have a degree and I didn't have the time or anything. So I ran, when my son was in grade 7 and 8, he had the same teacher. She was a terrible math teacher. And he hit high school. My daughter and I spent with her grade 9 math every night, 3-4 hours. I'm not kidding. Once he caught up, it was fine. We didn't have to do anything. But it took us a whole semester, whole class.
Well, you're being very gracious, by the way, because I can tell you're biding your time. Being someone who used to have a tutoring business that had to fill in the gaps from our teaching.
Without directly responding to that comment, because we're being recorded, what I will say is that
You caught my reminder.
in our math, what I am seeing is, so at each location, we have 4 locations currently in Hamilton. At each location, students might come from different schools. At most locations, it's the public and the Catholic will show up there. And those students might come from 4 or 5 different math classes. It's 15 kids, so it'll be a little bit spread out, because the schools like to make sure that every teacher is able to nominate a kid, right? There is an order in which you should teach the math units that is optimal. And we're not seeing that reflected. And we had to change the way our program was designed, because we realized that they weren't going to follow the flow in which units should be taught, which makes sense. For example, sometimes we'll be working with a student on the fraction unit, but suddenly there's a question that involves integers, but they haven't done the integer yet. And so there are issues to that, which I know that teachers themselves are very hardworking and very dedicated, but what you say is factually correct. You could be teaching grade 7 and 8 math without a math degree. And that can impact math instruction. And we're seeing that in our math program.
So who makes that decision?
Of what order teachers
No,
teach.
like, when a teacher teach something that they have a special.
That comes straight from the ministry, who decides what credentials are required to teach each course.
And it also comes
What
down.
do you think if you were teaching, you should have some math background?
You would think, but and
Sorry.
to be fair to many schools in this area, where you'd think, well, why isn't the principal? If you have a math, there are not enough people with math degrees as teachers to fill in that allotment. Like, just numerically, it wouldn't work.
Because they weren't taught.
No.
This is a lot of program goes.
They didn't take that special.
So
The
you
only-
get them to teach something else.
Yeah, right.
But you only
not
need so many
teachers.
phys ed
The
teachers.
only place you get that is
Or
private.
You only
English.
need so many phys ed teachers.
Or English teachers. It seemed like for
But if the teachers don't have math, they need to teach math. There should be a program where they go and get training
to
for
learn.
them.
It's the options are there, but the time frame is not.
And also, currently, one of an issue is, to no fault to anyone, many very experienced teachers chose early retirement because of COVID, because of their own health issues or their family's health issues. So if they were able to retire, they did. So there is a bit of a skill gap currently that needs addressing, just systematically as a whole.
And also pupils have more power, in particularly the older ones, in the classrooms, which was never evident in days of the over.
So not having to experience this type of event before, how does the teaching profession, the guidance counselors, those that go in and assess, how do they think this is going to affect the kids moving forward? Like the biggest thing that I had said, is by the time COVID was over, to your point, the kindergarten kids are now grade 2, grade 3. They learn how to socialize in kindergarten. By grade 3, they know how to socialize. And those that had access, and even those that didn't have access to technology, had access to technology. So they didn't have access to maybe to do online, they didn't have somebody to help, but go sit in front of the television, and like they had some access. And it seems like every generation changes as they go through, the education system from kindergarten to, because at one point there was less first generational families, then there became more first generation. So it changes, but COVID seems to have really put a wrench in not only the learning aspect, but that socialization aspect as well. Kids that come from other countries are still socialized. Different experiences, but they still have that social aspect. But, during COVID, like that just completely shut down worldwide. And I would think that now, as everybody's wheels are turning with lack of funding, lack of teachers, lack of, this whole COVID wrench is really, we're going to see the effects of it in 10 years when kids are going off to university and they can't function. When kids are joining the workforce and they can't function because those 3 important years, even kids that, left grade 8 during COVID and are now in grade 11, like grade 9 and 10 is again, a whole new socialization aspect. And now you're applying to universities and you haven't really learned the socialization of 14, 15, 16, 17, those formative years. So we can't depend on the government to be able to fund all of this, but how are the schools sort of looking at this from a long-term effect in terms of changing their styles of teaching, or what they feel and what they're seeing to be able to, sort of, help these kids along in all of the grades?
I think many schools right now are in survival. It is that they don't have the tools, from my perspective, which is all I can share, is that they currently don't have the tools to do the long-term thinking or planning of what's happening. They're trying to deal with what's in front of them currently. And I will tell you, like I said, like Martina said, I've been in education for 15 years. Schools feel different when you walk in the door. There's a certain sense of busyness and chaos, and the teachers right now are trying to get through this year because they are dealing with students. We actually had a student at one of the schools who was one of the quickest students ever removed from our program positively, because he had just never been in a classroom, so they put him in our program. And after 4 or 5 weeks of one-to-one, he's like, okay, I understand school now, and I'm fine. But there are students who are slower to change and slower to understand. And one of the things that isn't really being discussed in the city that I think should is there was like a mini baby bump 6 to 9 years ago. There were more babies being born. In our school boards, there are roughly about 1,300 more students, plus with immigration. The schools are busting at the seams. That's been a big problem in our program this year. Luckily not at St. David, we have a wonderful spot there, but at some of our other schools, there's no spots for us. There are classes taking place in non-classrooms, rooms that traditionally haven't been classrooms. There's schools that have lost their staff rooms because they need to have and there's been a relaxing of some of the caps. So class sizes are bigger than ever. And so I'm not sure they're able to long-term plan, given they don't know what the resources are going to be. And certain plans that have come out, such as the $200 to each family, there's not a lot for the school to do with those plans.
Yeah, I think we're really going to see the effects of it.
Yeah, so it respects the time, because some people have to get back to work. Martina?
Yeah, I think we should invite Carolyn back for another week at some time and have a whole different.
Yeah.
Not recorded. Don't record it.
We can talk about phonics and whole world.
The George
Chris
Hamilton.
and Brian.
To share and educate us on Neighbor to Neighbor and St. David's and everything, which we're so proud of. I had just to thank you. I had the opportunity to go to the school when it was launched a few years ago, and I was so excited about it, and I was so passionate about this program. And I was also telling Carolyn, 2 of my very best friends are volunteers at St. David's, and they were actually volunteers in another school in Hamilton pre that opening of that school. And my one friend, she has long gray hair, and she's a hoot. She's like 72 or something. I don't even remember. I don't keep track. But she told us about one little kid, not sharing any privacy, but she says, I had a kid today. This was a while ago who I just love. She loves them all. And she says, he looks at me and he says, you look like a grandma, but you sure don't act like my grandma. Here, she does a lot of traveling, so she misses a few weeks, but she loves it. She's a retired I don't know, director at the Gulf Country Club in Ancaster. The other girl of my best friend was a retired banker, so no, you don't have to be a teacher. I'm sure they're both super effective and they love doing it. So thank you so much for coming and sharing the update with us, helping educate everyone on certainly our program that we support and why it's so important there. So thank you so much for coming, Carolyn. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Reminder, next Friday is noon, it's morning at Ben A Company. It says noon, 7:30 a.m. And it's going to be our club assembly.
There's a program you can go.
For what?
There's a program you can go in.
Can I correct that? For some reason, I wrote noon now. So happy dollars. I'm going to limit you to 60-second speech. So start getting your money out if you're going to donate.
dollars there. One's a sad dollar because I heard that Lisa Marie Presley passed away.
Yes.
Which is sad. And then I'm clearing out dollars, and it's nothing to do with will writing. I'm not going anywhere, but I'm trying to take control of my basement. I have a framed copy of the Objects of Rotary here. It's quite lovely. I have two. I don't know how they came to me, but Dan took one for his office. If anyone else has an office where you would like to display this, it's yours.
$1.
And
Move that too.
This is the document that showed that it was approved for membership by Rotary International. If anyone would like to have this on their wall, their office. Otherwise, it's going in storage here and.
I'll take it. It's not going to go in storage.
Yep.
Nobody else is going to.
Okay.
Sold. Oh, no. Come on, now like. No problem. Another sad note, Randy Bachman's brother.
Yeah.
Also passed. Go ahead.
I'm very happy. Hey, speaker.
Excellent. And Happy New Year.
Thank you.
I have a couple of happy dollars. The first one is I had surgery on June 20th, which I'm really happy about. Just found out this morning. And
Your sex change?
yeah. And it looks like HMC's Haida's birthday is probably going to be a go on August 26th. And I happen to be chairman of the celebration.
August 26th.
Oh, yes, you picked that up, did you not? Yes.
I'm chairman of the turn of Haida. Have a turn of Haida.
Okay, you got
do.
one?
Sorry, wait. Let me see.
Tour.
There's a picture right there. Guns flashing. It's a limited print, and Lisa's pretty happy to get that. But anyway, you want a picture of Haida?
He wants to.
So I want the turn of Haida.
Parts Canada, they keep it closed.
Okay, you got 60
Okay,
seconds.
that's $5.
Could have a Rotary meeting.
But anyway.
They could.
Yeah, I'm a happy guy. Here's five.
If everybody wants to drive down, you could. In one of the messes.
We have a happy and sad dollar sad.
He's looking.
My uncle passing this week and because great presentations. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm a sad, as happy as all either. I'm happy.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I'm busy.
Time with my husband in 22 years without the kids.
Where are you going?
Going to Grenada.
Later.
Talk about, but we'll figure it out.
We can have a US invasion reenact.
Your turn, sir.
Yeah, I've got $8 here. Very much appreciated our speaker's talk today. Informative. But Paul, one thing. Yes, got a question for you. What, you recorded this seance. What are you going to do?
Actually, I upload them to the members side, members only side of the club record.
I'll show you.
Yes.
Wow.
I uploaded.
So nobody's going to hear my question except members. Thank God.
Next. Happy dollars for you.
I'm very happy to have picked this session to come to after all these years, so yes, I'm very happy.
Excellent.
So Mike, you can do this, share this twice.
My happy back is as well for our speaker here today. In my prior Rotary life, we sponsored a group study exchange, if anybody knows what that is. And we had the South African teachers with us embedded for about a month or 2 months, and they visited schools, and what a difference in the enthusiasm and their willingness to teach and everything that they want to do for kids. It's nice to see similar thing in here today.
Now, Olivia's online. She's having an afternoon with Hudson. He just went down for a nap, so she's not turning the cameras on. Sorry, Martina. I told her I'd pass the regrets on to you. And so I won't bug her for a happy dollars today. So with that, next week, Club Assembly. Remember to RSVP to Dan. And
The next,
A toaster.
next meeting here.
The next meeting is in 2 weeks today.
Who's, you do.
Yes.
I'll update it as soon as I have a chance to read it. I saw it got passed through to me and I haven't turned my email on this morning to look at it. So,
Okay.
all right. So for the good of Rotary,
It's really good.
the world over.
Chop, chop.
Meeting adjourned.
I'll show you.